Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. First, we have approval of the agenda. There is an addition. It will be AXON Fleet 3 camera kit, and that will be under new business, and it will become 9B. My understanding is there is no closed session. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? In case there's somebody signed up. Nobody's signed up? Okay. Anybody who is not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on to the public hearing. That would be number 3A. The topic of the public hearing is rezoning for Artina Phase 4. I declare the public hearing open. Welcome, Mickey.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and council members. Let me see if I can get this running. Perfect. Okay. There's actually several public hearings before you tonight. One is the rezoning. It's known as Phase 4, downtown development and Artina Park. We also have some accompanying waivers, several zoning waivers, number A through G, and public facility waivers 2203 A through D. The location of the proposed application is highlighted in yellow on the screen. It consists of 5 properties, and it's bound by the railroad tracks, Manassas Drive to the east, Broad Alley, which is the one-way street right at the edge of Park 170, and Connor Drive to the south. You can see the current use. There's a lot of auto repair by the numerous vehicles. And then a existing parking lot. This is the current zoning. So the ones that were identified with all the cars and auto repair, they're currently zoned I-1, which is industrial district. And then the parking lot in the rear is zoned PF, public facilities. The application proposes to rezone all of these properties to MUD, downtown mixed-use district. Here's an excerpt from the future land use plan for the city, and this is all highlighted in pink, which is noting the city center redevelopment district, which is our downtown mixed-use district. So the development is proposed to be in 3 phases. Phase 1 is going to consist of one apartment building, approximately 10 stories tall, with approximately 200 units. You can see in the foreground that there's a parking lot. 150 of these spaces are going to be designated for the property to the north, the Park 170 development. And just to note that they are proposing sidewalk along Broad Alley. They're going to make it right in and out. So there's going to be right turn, left turn, and you'll be able to make a left turn onto Broad Alley. They're widening it to make those left turn lanes off Manassas Drive. Of note is the applicant is proffering and showing on the generalized development plan the city streetscape along Manassas Drive with the sidewalk, street trees, street lights, and parallel parking along Manassas Drive. And here's just a close-up of the current Manassas Drive intersection. This is Naylor Drive right here, and there is this median opening there. The applicant has proposed to change that and close the median and then install this left turn lane. I know there can be some difficulty turning left there, or actually even exiting left from the Naylor Drive, so I think this will have some improvement to traffic flow there.
Yeah, just to clarify, Naylor Drive will only be right in, right out.
Correct.
After this is done.
Correct. So moving on to phase 2 will be a second apartment building. This basically mimics the first one. It's approximately 10 stories, 200 units. The parking is going to be either podium or structured parking underneath the building, as well as some parking between the buildings. You'll notice that they are providing sidewalks throughout the development. It is a good connection with the proposed sidewalk along Broad Alley, and then that goes all the way down to there's existing sidewalks on both sides of Connor Drive, so there is some pedestrian connectivity that's being proposed. And also, as part of phase 2, they are proposing to take that 150 parking space area and build a garage for those spaces. And I would like to note that it was recommended that the applicant provide some kind of direct access from the parking garage to that intersection, so there is quick access to the development at Park 170. Moving on to phase 3. The only thing that is really changing is this is a proposed commercial building in phase 3, 100,000 square feet, and an associated parking garage with that. So this is the total development. And as you can see, the Connor House is proposed to be retained. The applicant has proffered these elevations. So I'm just going to go quickly through them. This is kind of their proposed design for these apartment buildings. And this is the one specifically with the Connor House. So this up here is showing the front of the property, and this is showing the side when you'd be looking from Broad Alley. And again, another side view, you can see the Connor House, so this would be from existing Connor Drive. And this would be the rear of the property. And for location purposes, here's the Connor House. Another rendering showing potential design of the property. And just a few more photos that give you a kind of context, and you can notice that there's an entryway to parking. There might be some landscaping above that in the middle of that podium parking to provide some landscaping. And just one final photo there. So I just wanted to go over these items quickly about the waivers and modifications. There is an ability under the zoning ordinance to waive certain zoning requirements. The applicant has asked for several of them, and I will go through them fairly quickly. So in the MUD Downtown Mixed Use District, there is a requirement to have no more than 75% of the gross floor area to be residential. The applicant is requesting an increase to 100%. Now, in total, it'll be 80% residential, 20% commercial, but the applicant has requested that it be 100% so he could be phase and still be in compliance. Due to the amount of parking, he is asking for increase in impervious surface coverage to 90% from the required 75, and to reduce the minimum height of buildings to 20 feet from 40. That would basically be the proposed parking garage for those 150 spaces, and potentially the commercial building. For parking, they are requesting 1.3 spaces for the multifamily. That is consistent with the Park Tower that has done some counting, and for phase 2 of the 8-acre development, that is the requested reduction that they had in a previous application that was brought before you.
That's the Artena Apartments, the 7-story apartments behind Park 170.
They're 1.3.
Yeah. Well, no.
Well-
So the actual counts, the actual demand is 1.3. When I did my analysis of both Park 170 and Artena, it was actually, I found more like 1.22 during peak time Sunday morning. At that time, I think they did an updated analysis where they found 1.3 was the max. So that's what they're going with.
Right, and they did provide a parking study that demonstrated those numbers.
So we're eliminating the 1 space per 10 units?
Yes, yes, so it's just 1.3 times 400, right, approximately 400 units.
Real quick question.
Mhm.
By making it 1.3 spaces instead of 1.75 spaces, does that allow for more parking?
No, it allows for less.
Okay, I was getting myself confused.
Less
I was-
required,
less
yes.
required,
Mhm.
Okay.
And you always have to round up, so if it ends up as a point number, you round up to the whole number for the amount of required
Okay,
spaces.
thank you.
They are seeking waivers for the parking lot landscaping requirements. We do have some suburban type requirements for landscaping islands, as well as a square footage of green space per space, as well as the distance of where that can be. Given the layout of the property, the applicant is certainly requesting those waivers. And finally, the screening requirement, there is a requirement to put a fencing and vegetative screening between incompatible uses. There is one directly across the street, one of those industrial properties, and the screening is supposed to be, be opaque as well as the fence. So they are doing what is shown on the generalized development plan, which is just showing some tree planting there. So the public facility manuals waivers is really related to the private streets. And they're requesting a modification of the street width to 24 feet. And they are requesting there's a 700 vehicle per day limit on private streets in our PFM. They're requesting that be waived or exceeded. And there is also another requirement that sidewalks be on both sides of the street. As you saw on the plan, not all the sidewalks are on both sides, so that is the request for the waiver. And then allowing residential frontage on a private street. I would note that these were the same as done in 8-acre Phase 2, which is the property that would front on Euclid. It's not under construction, but you did have some waivers before you a few months ago. And of course, we need to analyze whether this application is consistent with a comprehensive plan. There are several aspects of the application that meet those requirements. First of all, they are consolidating parcels for an integrated development. There's certainly a mix of residential and commercial uses. And it's trying to also contribute and create a modern town center, especially with being the City Hall and Park Central right across the street, and to provide some adequate parking, at least for the additional 150 spaces for Park 170. I mentioned before about the road connections that are proposed with this application and the pedestrian connectivity, as well as the parking, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But I did want to highlight that there is this project in the CIP called Connor Drive Extension South, which is trying to bring Connor Drive south of the railroad tracks in some shape or form. And that is, I'm showing this to you because staff would like the applicant to at least contribute to this design in some manner, given the fact that the property is located very close and abuts Connor Drive. The application does also is consistent with the various aspects of the MUD district, which discusses land use, community design, open space, as well as transportation. You can see the elements there. I'm not going to go through them. So staff is recommending approval of this application, but we do believe there are some aspects that the applicant could improve upon. So we are recommending that it provide a design for the Connor Drive frontage using VDOT urban street standards at the time of the Phase 2 site plan. So that relates to that Connor Drive South project. We want to make sure that it is with the VDOT urban standards when it's fully constructed. That way we get some maintenance funding from it. Next, we want, it is not shown on the general development plan, but there's an existing crosswalk on Manassas Drive immediately south of Broad Alley. When these improvements go in, it's not going to be a good location. And also I know with our Complete Streets or Downtown Streets project, they actually recommended it going north on the opposite side. So we are recommending that the existing crosswalk be removed as part of this application. And lastly, we would like the clarification that the Novec street lights that are in front on the Manassas Drive frontage will be removed and that all existing utilities will be placed underground.
Also, the last recommendation that I added, that making sure that the garage or the 150 space surface lot, however it's designed and structured, there's quick pedestrian access out of the garage or the surface lot to the Park 170 side, because that 150 spaces is supposed to serve Park 170 commercial, so they're supposed to provide direct access, the exits and everything else of the garage towards Park 170 to connect to that intersection there so they can cross safely to the Park 170 commercial.
Thank you. So we are recommending approval of several of the waivers. They're up on the screen for you, but I wanted to focus on the ones that we are making some requested modifications or additions. So for waiver 2203B, we would like to see some architectural elevations for the standalone parking structure and commercial building. That was not provided as part of the application. So that is something we would like to see to make sure that it's in keeping with the character of the downtown and using durable materials. Next, we would like to see an open space and recreation plan for waiver number 2203C, subject to final review and approval by the zoning administrator. There wasn't that much detail on the general development plan, so we wanted to make sure that, especially some landscaping in the green space areas, as well as some dog stations, as well as including the baskets as well as the bags, so people who have dogs have a place to put the waste and just make sure that the property is being maintained. And we'd also like a landscaping and screening plan for waiver 2203G, subject to my review and approval. We do have some concerns about the buffering, especially along Manassas Drive. There are going to be 2 properties that are still going to be industrial, and we would want to make sure that that is screened from view from Manassas Drive, and also to really review the screening that they're going to be providing where the commercial building is going to be that abuts the existing and the remaining commercial industrial buildings to the south. And then lastly, the public facilities waiver for reducing the private street width, we would like that to be no less than 26 feet. That is a requirement that the fire marshal has, and so we would like to abide by that. They were requesting 24. And that is it. That is my presentation. There is more detail in the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'm leaving up the final GDP for Phase 3 up if you have any
Okay,
questions.
Thank you, Mickey. That was a very good presentation. I think this is going to be a beautiful addition to the downtown. It's going to be just lovely. I do have a question. I usually articulate my concerns about parking because there are parking problems in the city. And we would be going from 740 spaces down to 520. Was there any consideration given to keeping the 1 space per 10 units? That would at least add 40.
I'd have to defer to the applicant on that. I don't know if maybe the garages could accommodate that, but again, I'll let the applicant speak to that, because we don't know how many parking spaces are going to be provided because the buildings haven't been designed yet, but I'll let the applicant talk to you about that.
Okay, and I want to confirm that the 150 spaces referenced in the documents is not a part of the 520.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Carrera, do you have a question?
I do have a question. On the utility undergrounding, to get clarification, where are the poles located or in the perimeter that are still above ground?
I don't know if I have a good photo.
Or if you can just off that map. Just off that
Okay,
map.
sure. This is, and we're talking about the Manassas Drive frontage. There is 1 or 2 poles here. I know there's some other utilities that might be popping up. I think there's some kind of, I don't know if it's a cable line or whatnot.
I just want to make sure that will go underground.
That is why we're asking for that specific change, to make sure that everything that is there will go underground.
Underground to the tracks. The second question I have is, any percentage of the units going to be for senior housing or for market index?
No, as far as I know, they're market rate.
Okay, thank you.
Comments or questions? Yes.
Thanks, Vicki, for the presentation.
Welcome.
So no market rate units. Was there a particular reason why the city's not asking for a percentage?
Yes, so you're talking about why we're not asking for affordable?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was agreed upon back in 2020. It was a part of a purchase and sale agreement where the city had negotiated specific cash payments as well. So there was no demand at that time for affordable housing. So the pricing of what the city was going to get was based off this current plan. So if we're modifying it, then the applicant's going to have the ability to say, well, then, you're going to have to decrease how much we're paying for you. And my math for the profits for the downtown was based also on getting this cash as well. So I don't recommend modifying the purchase
So the
sale.
governing body voted to not provide affordable housing in this building?
It wasn't a question at that time. So it wasn't that they affirmatively said,
Did the governing body choose not to put affordable housing in this particular building?
I don't recall whether
It wasn't an option, so it wasn't like the governing body said no. It's just we were negotiating the best value at that time. So it wasn't presented option A or B. It was just here was the price we could get for market rate housing. 400 units is what we negotiated at that time for them to be able to make the investment of buying all those industrial properties and being able to do the redevelopment and still get us the revenue that we needed.
I've only been here for 3 years, but help me
Yeah.
understand, when you say "we," are you referring to the governing body and its approval process?
I did
and
not.
policy, or-
Yeah, I didn't present that as an option to the governing body.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's unfortunate.
perhaps I should have, but again, my goal at that time, none of this was approved. Phase 3, phase 4, we were in the infancy. We didn't really have a lot of wiggle room here. They had to take the risk for acquiring this expensive industrial area, as did Norton Scott with phase 3. These were expensive industrial areas, and I was trying to encourage them to proceed with this investment. And so that wasn't even a discussion at that point, because it was just trying to get the downtown off the ground. So it wasn't a discussion point at that time. Once we got these two approved, then that became for further developments. That became an ongoing request that we had. But to get the downtown kick-started, it just wasn't an option at that time.
As I recall, we wanted the most bang for our buck. The city was more in need at that time than we are right now.
And just for background too, they are the only developers who were able to acquire this. I was trying for years to work with someone to go in and acquire these industrial lots. They were the only ones to do this. This is not an easy project. Neither was the Norton Scott Phase 3 to acquire the base tract where the garage was going. So just some history for everyone. These were complicated deals. Norton Scott was the only one who was able to acquire these industrial lots here, and Oxoili was the only one who was able to acquire those. So we didn't really have a lot of leverage. It was really about just being able to move these projects forward.
Thanks. Mickey, the other question I had was about bedroom mix. What's the mix of bedrooms in the 400 units?
I do not know that. The applicant will have to address that. I know they have not designed the buildings, but I'll let him speak to your question.
Okay, because I'm really interested in having family-size units with 3 bedrooms at least in them.
Okay.
So hopefully they can do that. The other thing is bicycle parking. Are they going to provide bicycle spots? For
Yes,
parking?
they did not request a waiver. That is a requirement in the city center redevelopment district or anywhere. It's just there's more bicycle parking requirements, and that will be addressed at the site plan stage.
Okay. And I saw that the waiver, we're not letting them get off as far as the green space, because I'm really disappointed in the design. I don't see very much green space being utilized, a little parklet or something for kids to use and utilize. But that's a requirement that we're asking them to come back and bring forth a plan for some kind of recreational green space, other than a pool. I mean, a pool is very limited, seasonal. I just hope that they provide something where kids can recreate and have green space.
We don't have a specific requirement that says they need to put some type of tot lot or whatnot.
So what kind of things can they do? I mean, more than just doggy bags, I'm sure.
Well, we are deferring to the applicant, and we'll try to see. They do have limited green space, and we are concerned about the amount of landscaping and what they're putting in. Maybe the applicant can address that and see. I know some of these areas are kind of tight, so I don't know. And again, that's something that can be further developed during the site plan stage.
I would hope so. That'd be disappointing if we put 400 residents and no recreational facility or parklet where kids can go and swing on a swing or ride on a seesaw. Okay, it looks good. I know we need the 400 units. I look forward to hearing from the applicant.
Great.
Thank you.
Councilmember Javad?
Hey, thank you. Good evening. The green areas, those are landscaping?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have what is the one structure, the 10-story or the 10-unit structure?
These apartment buildings will be the 10-story structures.
Okay. And then that's the parking up top?
Well, according to the elevations, those renderings that you saw, the parking was basically underneath the building, either podium or maybe perhaps underground, combination of both. Or I don't know, well,
I'm saying,
I take
what-
that
what-
back. It was probably not going to be underground, but it might be structured or podium parking. But I'll let, again, the applicant has emphasized they have not designed these buildings through our negotiations. So I know that just from what we've seen, it's going to be underneath the building, whether that's podium or underground parking.
Okay. And then what kind of commercial are they recommending? Is it office space, retail, restaurant? What
I
are they
think it's
building
going to
up?
be what the market dictates at the time. They are just saying it's a 100,000 square foot commercial building. So in the MUD district, there's a variety of commercial uses. We just kind of went over them last week. So any of those would be permitted to go into that building.
And which building is the commercial one?
This one. So it does have a bit of frontage along Manassas Drive, and this is where they're showing it to be.
And just as a reminder, the commercial goal achieved through this development was the 150 space parking structure to service Park 170. That was the purpose of this development overall, was to start fixing the Park 170 parking issues, because I was hired. They said, why is that empty? I said, well, number one, there's no parking. Let's start building parking for Park 170 commercial. That was the goal. They added the commercial as icing to the cake. That wasn't a requirement when we were negotiating with them. We said, look, we just need you to redevelop this space and get us some parking for Park 170. They were going to build a residential to finance that. And then they said, hey, we also want to build some additional commercial. And we said, great, that's wonderful. But that's why it was phase 3.
Yeah.
Whereas if you notice, in this Norton Scott development, we tied all of it, where it was happening. Phase 1A happened with City Hall and Building C, and then Phase 2, there's requirements in the comprehensive plan that they can't build certain amount of residential units until they have the commercial pieces. Here, we didn't do that, because the only thing we tied there was it went before you can build that first residential building, the 150 spaces have to be done for Park 170, because that was the commercial goal that we had for the development at that time.
Right. I mean, the only reason I ask is because, we don't have a proven concept of commercial space yet in the city, right? And I caution adding more commercial frontage or square footage in the city with still empty.
Yeah, that's why they have it as Phase 3. That when they get to that point,
Office space, okay,
yeah.
that might be doable, but
It's going to be
retail,
driven by the
restaurant?
market, like the zoning administrator said. They're not going to build speculatively. They're going to wait and see how this all turns out.
Okay.
If this is successful, then there'll be a market demand for additional commercial there. If it's not, I doubt they'll proceed with that development. That's why, again, this development doesn't need that. It can stand alone with just the 2 residential buildings. That's icing on the cake. That's there. If it's market driven, if the downtown, this part is successful and there's additional demand, now we have some additional space to play with for additional commercial.
Fair enough. So that's like an optional plan. Because then the
And
other
just to clarify, office is considered commercial, so that is,
Right.
yeah, so
yeah, I wouldn't
just.
mind office use,
Okay,
right? But I'm
right.
just saying for retail and restaurants, it's hard in our city.
Right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and I was also saying the private street that we're referring to is the waiver
It's gonna-
request.
Yeah, this street and this street. And then it's called Broad Alley now. We're going to try to rename it Liberty Street, but that will also be a private street.
And wouldn't that count as, what do you guys call it, the screening along Manassas Drive?
That is what we call city center streetscape.
Okay.
So the hook lights and the trees between them, so that the typical, you can see it through the downtown. It's been modified here and there, but that's what that is demonstrating.
Okay, so just to clarify, the waiver is not requesting the screening to be removed.
So the screening area that we're
That's
concerned
referring
about
to
is
that
up
area.
here, yes, and between the disparate uses. And then, of course, right here, so when you drive down Manassas Drive, there is some screening of those industrial buildings.
I think that's it. No follow-up, thank you.
No follow-up? Okay. Mickey, refresh my memory. This will contain both 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, is that correct?
We did not get into the unit counts or the bedroom counts. The parking is based on number of units or per unit. Again, I have to defer to the applicant and how they're proposing to design the buildings.
Okay, because a hypothetical, if, for example, there were a family of 3, 2 adults and 2 parents and 1 adult child, if they each had a vehicle and they had to go in different directions every day to go to work, is there any kind of a permit system that's being considered so that all 3 of them would have some certainty of parking when they got home?
Well, from the city's perspective, we don't like to get into parking management, so we would really rely on the applicant and the landlord to deal with those
So
parking issues.
that would be a question for Mr. Oxoilo. Okay.
Correct. And reminder, they already own a property, our tenant here, so they know kind of what the parking dynamics already are for it. So they're the right people to ask that question. And then I did my independent analysis as well with both Park 170 and our tenant to see what the parking situation was like.
Okay, and I know that we don't get into that, but I know.
Oh, sure, it's
other
a concern.
neighborhoods- Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
This is a very odd question. I know that the fire truck or the fire vehicles need 26 feet. Do we know how much feet the school buses need?
I don't, but I believe the 26 feet certainly covers that, because it covers the widest fire apparatus, so I'm pretty sure that would be included, the bus width would be included in that.
Because I was just wondering if when we do have children of school age and they're going to school, I imagine the buses would need to go in there and do some sort of loopy-loo.
I mean, I'm happy to confirm if that's the case.
If you
Chief.
could, please, I'd be most appreciative.
Or Chief Soper, that's the 26 feet for the ladder truck, right? Yeah, the ladder truck's much bigger than a school bus, so, yeah.
Okay. Follow-up question? Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay. Does Mr. Oxoilo want to address us now, or do you want to wait until after public comment? What would you like to do, Mr. Oxoilo?
Carlos Montenegro, you may recall.
I'm sorry.
I'm Carlos Montenegro.
Carlos, if you want to come up to the mic.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
He's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've met before. I'm Carlos Montenegro. I'm the attorney for the applicant.
I see, I understand.
Mr. Oxoilo is in Portugal right now.
Okay, okay. And if you could speak directly into the microphone, it would be so
I will
much.
do my best.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to address the questions now, or?
I can preempt some of these questions perhaps, if you don't mind.
He does have a presentation to provide the governing body, and that may answer some of the questions.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize it. Okay,
Yeah, I've been taking notes, so
okay, okay, super, thank you. Okay,
you may come here or there.
I think it's easiest to come here.
okay, okay.
You want to show them how to flip slides, Mickey?
Just make sure this is
You got this.
a resume slideshow. Here we go. Why this isn't working. Okay, I'm just gonna.
Such technology. I remember as a young planner, having to hand sketch everything out for the board.
The
Good
arrows
Lord.
is what you use.
Arrows?
Yeah,
Thank you.
put this up.
Okay. Thanks, Mickey.
You're welcome.
Thank you all very much for the time here. My name is Carlos Montenegro. I'm attorney for Artena. Mr. Oxoyu is the principal on all the Artena projects. One of the things that is paramount to understand here is that we started this process, heck, with Mr. Palco more than 3 years ago. We started design development so that we could file a rezoning. And one of the reasons that we have these requests for waivers is because of the indeterminate, if you will, design that we've been working on since then. We're trying to maintain some flexibility in our design. At present, however, we've actually gone quite a ways. And let me try to give you some direct answers to some of the questions we've heard here. we're talking about 550,000 gross square feet of development, of which 400,000 would be residential. The phasing of the buildings has been up in the air, but now we're pretty much narrowed down to the middle building. That middle building is now, because we're trying to accommodate structured parking in it, it's grown a bit in terms of height and density. The predominant unit types are one with den and twos. That our experience at the tower next door is that that's where the market falls. A few 3-bedrooms will be provided, and all of this will be market-driven, market-priced, but because of its location downtown, it'll probably be moderate to some extent in terms of the type of housing we're going to have and the pricing. The parking ratio, and I know I'm jumping a little bit here, but the parking ratio is derived from studies we've done. We've commissioned with Grove, Slade, and Associates. At our Park Tower project, we are actually at 1.12 on most weekdays, up to 1.28. So we rounded to 1.3 and said, okay, let's let all this go at 1.3, and we're designing it that way. That means still quite a bit of structured parking under the buildings. And that's the direction we're going in, is to put structured parking under the buildings. Some of the structured parking is 2 or 3 stories. Right now it's moving around in terms of design, but it's 2 or 3 stories of structured parking under the buildings. And then that podium per se. But, let's go to the pictures. Okay. As you can see, we did assemble quite a bit of land from third parties, and that assemblage allows us to put the 150 parking spaces right on Manassas Drive at the northern corner of the property. At present, the initial phase, they're going to all be surface. And we're going to build a large surface parking lot to complement our first phase, as well as structure parking under the first phase. The numbers are being developed right now in terms of total number of spaces, but they're going to be quite a few. We overpark everything, by the way. Even though we're asking for a reduction, all of our projects, we provide overparking, all of our centers, et cetera. The commercial option will require, because of parking again, will require structure. And that's why we're showing a structure next to a commercial building. Commercial building could be 1, 2, 3 stories, depending on how much we build out. And my expectation is second and third floor would be professional offices, something of that nature. First floor would be what I call professional service establishments, things like flower shops, card shops, things of that nature. Again, this is well in the future, so we don't have a specific marketing plan for that, but we put that there also as a buffer itself in the future, in the event that we do not acquire the properties next door, which we hope to at some point. On the issue of buffer landscaping along the industrial boundaries, we will put landscaping. We have no problem with Ms. Berry's suggestion that we provide landscaping and screening, et cetera. We don't want that use affecting our property. We just didn't have a specific design at this point in time. It'll be on the site plan. So, the elevations, again, these are all conceptual, but our architects are hard at work designing the first building. I don't want to bring up a bunch of issues, but Connor Drive access has been a matter from our design guys, whether or not we should enter into the garage off of Connor Drive or not. So that's a variable that's going on right now. We also have an elevation drop from Connor Drive down to Broad Alley that creates a space for an additional deck underneath the building. That's all being designed. And we've gone to a bigger first phase in terms of the size of the building and the number of units, because that'll make the parking economy work out for the future phases. Phase 2, if we're going to retain the Connor House in any way, it will require that we be judicious in terms of how much land area we allocate to parking. These, like I said, these buildings are actually under design right now. And we had to design the buildings so that we can set the footprint, so that we can have a valid site plan to file. And we're hoping to be able to file that site plan in the coming 3, 4, 5 weeks. So by the time you all act on this matter, we will be probably teed up to file our site plan and get things going. We're not fighting the matter of the 26-foot travel lanes. I just want to note that VDOT Category 2 roadways are 24, and they're sufficient for most of these functions. We did meet with the Fire Marshal's office about redesigning the cul-de-sac of Connor Drive, and we've elected to leave it the way it is right now because of the issue of the truck turning radius. Okay. Yes, we're going to put all the utilities underground. I believe there's gas on Manassas Drive. There's also gas in there. We're going to have to relocate that. The other thing, here, let me show an illustration here, if I may. What I was going to say is that the vertical separation between Manassas Drive and the properties adjacent, which are this area in here, is quite a vertical drop. So when we rebuild all this, there's going to be a substantial berm, and we'll probably fence it and put a barrier in it to restrict access directly into the site off of the street here. We want people to come in up here. Okay, so the vertical is going to affect how that looks, but we're going to put everything underground as it is. We had some correspondence about extending a walkway in the final plan to put a walkway directly to the corner, and that's fine. We're happy to do that. We're also happy as a part of the reconstruction of the intersection of Broad Alley with Manassas Drive to relocate the walkway that's up there to the north. That's all going to be part of the same project as far as we're concerned. So we're good with that. Otherwise, I'm going to ask for your approval for this project. We look forward to get going. Any
Will you
questions,
take questions?
please?
Governing body questions? Questions?
Yeah, I
Yes,
got
go
one.
ahead.
The name of that street right off of Manassas Drive.
This one?
Right, yeah, that
Yeah.
one.
It's currently Broad Alley, and it's going to be Liberty Street, right?
Is that private or city-owned then?
It's all private.
So you will be maintaining or the people next door?
The good people next door are going to maintain their half. We're going to widen it
Okay.
on our side of the boundary line, and we're going to, instead of being one way, it's going to be two ways with a turn lane.
So like snow removal and all that?
Yeah, there's going to be,
You'll do
yeah.
your half, you do your half.
Yeah, I mean, we've agreed to remove snow, et cetera, from all the parking areas. So that'll, we're not going to leave part of it as a problem for our tenants either. So it's going to get done. As to the, I know one more question. As to the open space, we're going to provide substantial open space landscaping, green space, and the customary recreational facilities for the kids of our tenants. We do that. We do that everywhere. As a matter of fact, we have a project we just purchased in Bethesda, and it's 20 stories and we're doing all the stuff on the roof. So it's, we're very much into providing all the market facilities that these tenants would expect. Bicycling, clean sidewalks. We have personnel that stay on site and make sure everything's taken care of.
Okay. Follow-up?
Yeah, one follow-up, I guess, for the staff. The 150 parking spaces they'll be going to Park 170, they can't use it for residential, right? Gonna be
It's a
for-
mix. They have to because they're losing some of their residential. So they willingly gave up 200 parking spaces and accepted because 150. And the reason for that was those 200 were for residential, but at most it was about 30 cars parked there,
Yeah.
right? They like this plan because it helps with residential parking for Building B, which is smaller, and then the commercial for Building B in the future. So what they'll try to do is Building A, which is if you're looking across the street, Building A is on the right. They're going to try to make it so that Market Street and the street behind it, I forget the name of it, that's for Building A, and then the residents of Building B could park. That's why the structured parking makes a lot of sense, because then that allows Park 170 to designate the top unit for residential and the bottom unit for commercial to make it easier for commercial. That was an add-on feature we didn't require of them that they put in there that will make the parking flow a little bit better. But they're going to put signage as well for commercial parking versus residential parking. And that's something they're going to negotiate with each of their tenants, including possibly adding some Market Street parking spaces for commercial uses as well. That's an ongoing conversation.
Well,
they
yeah,
have
I mean,
with
that was
restaurants.
their whole argument, is that they don't have enough sufficient parking space for the retail, right?
They had none. Yeah, there was no
But they're
parking.
using that parking for residential instead.
Well, no, because they had 200 parking spaces for residential, and they gave that up
Okay.
to get 150 to give at least half for commercial and half for residential.
They
So
want that back.
again, to bring everyone back to that time, and Jeanette remembers this very well, the city was at a very disadvantaged position back then. Financially, economically, everything was failing, and we had to turn this around, and we had to find partners who were going to be there to help us troubleshoot these issues. The reason why this was approved back in 2020 and they're coming here for 2023 rezoning was because they themselves were delayed by the parking negotiations we had with Park 170. They couldn't start this project until we had an agreement with Park 170, right? And the reason for that was Park 170 wants 150 spaces closer to their Building B. So that was the incentive that drove that. Remind you also, the theater can't start until this
Yeah,
is
everything's tied
done.
together.
They're all kind of tied together. So it's a complex.
But that's
It's
what they
not a
gave-
standard development.
That's what we had on the ground lease, was 200 spaces.
Yes, we had 200
Okay.
plus the 150 in front of City Hall. Remember that?
Right.
They agreed to give that up as well. That's why the theater can be built, because they controlled in the old City Hall lot, they controlled 150 spaces in front of there, plus the 200 spaces in front of the Connor House. They agreed to get rid of control of all of that in replacement for this, because they believed in the downtown vision that we had. And that was those were very complex negotiations and long-term negotiations. And Phase 4 was definitely a partner in that, and pushing Park 170 to get to an agreement along with other partners we had at that time, some of which you are no longer partners with us. So.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah.
Follow-up?
No.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
So this is more out of curiosity. You said that you have to move the gas line. Where is the gas line now, if you do know, and where would it be moved to?
Well, the gas line is presently, I know there's a pipe stand out of the ground that's right here.
Okay,
Our engineers will determine where it's going, et cetera, but it'll be relocated underground, and it'll be put in an easement so that it's not obtrusive to any other future activities.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Moving on to the public. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and
Here we go.
hearing. Oh, yes. Please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Robert Stevens. I live at 9038 Bellowgate Drive. You said that there was no marketing plan for the retail and the light commercial on the ground floor. Yes, correct.
Not currently.
does the city council does the governing body have any plan, is there any method by which City Hall can rectify, can incentivize that retail? Because right now, that whole city center area, there's nothing on the ground floor, and they say that that's because there's no parking, but that is surely not the sole
Right,
the sole deciding factor on whether you can get retail in an area.
right.
There's
right.
nothing there.
Yeah, Laszlo.
Yeah, so I can go over the history of that. So the three biggest problems, and well, I had four as well, but with Park 170, when I came on board, there was multiple consultant reports about what happened there, right? One of them was ownership. So the previous owners, or the original developers, really duped the city and wanted to make that all residential. You could see how they built out the tenant spaces there. They didn't really build them out properly. So it's going to be very challenging now, even to lease now. There's going to be a lot of tenant improvement dollars that are required to make it work. The person who bought them out was not interested in converting it to commercial either. They wanted to wait the city out and convert it all into residential. So they pushed away businesses, even those few businesses that were interested in going there, they pushed them away. The parking, right? You talk to any retailer, every time I brought someone over to look at it, they're like, well, where are my customers going to park? They're just not good parking. And this is the part of this is to at least fix it for building B, the building on the left side. And we're looking at plans in the future to fix on the right side. The third was the lack of a commercial anchor, right? You don't build that much commercial space and not have a plan to bring a business that brings other restaurants or other businesses with it. If you look at every modern town center in Northern Virginia, they're anchored by a movie theater. And that's our approach here across the street from this city hall, is to incentivize the entrance of a movie theater. The reason why I'm not pushing them so much, and the fourth, I'm sorry, was just the transportation issues, visibilities with trees, just blocking signage. That was another issue that was pointed out as well. We have an arborist now on staff, or on contracted, who's evaluating the trees. That's going to fix that issue. The reason why I'm not pushing them aggressively on the commercial piece is the same thing as what Councilman Javette said. We can't go beyond what the market bears. The pre-movie theater, the market analysis was that we could only support at the most about 100,000 square feet of commercial space in the downtown, between the theater, Building A here, so the ground level City Hall, Building C next door, and the Park 170. That maxes out that 100,000. Now, will the theater change those? Yes, especially the type of theater, right? So if it's the type of theater that we have an existing LOI with, B&B, they're estimated to bring in between 400,000 and 450,000 people per year, which is significantly more than another theater group we were discussing that was going to bring about 250 to 300,000. So that extra 100,000, 150,000 people coming here are going to change the market dynamics. And at that time, we'll proceed and do an updated leakage analysis of looking at retail demand minus retail supply and see what's available in terms of retail supply that we can then move forward, and we'll partner with Aksoilu to move them towards bringing in those types of retail establishments on the ground level. And then to their point, you can't really get retail on the second and third level, so it's going to have to be some kind of commercial office use or professional services. So we'll have to find different office tenants for that purpose. But it's a great question, because it's a long, tough history surrounding Park 170 and this entire downtown, and all the steps that were taken in the past, and how we've kind of had to work around that, right? We've had that development. Phase 2 behind it, again, was probably not the best what we would have done with the land had we had it now, but most of our land was gone by the time we came on board, except we had some pieces of land on this side to start with, and so we had to find developer partners who could go ahead successfully and acquire the industrial properties to join with us to redevelop per our vision. And so we were lucky to find Aksoilu, because other developers weren't able to go in and acquire these industrial lots across the city. And we were lucky to find Norton Scott, who had a relationship with some of the industrial owners over here. They were able to acquire those parcels, and that allowed this redevelopment here. So not just the 150 space parking, but by doing the development on this side, we're able to bring the garage closer to the downtown as well. Previously, the garage was going to go all the way back to where the last 2/2 units are being built back there, the new ones at Stanley Martin. They were going to be, it's not on this slide here, but if you look outside, when you walk outside, there's 2/2 condominiums being built by Stanley Martin. Those last units, that's where the garage was going to be, way too far to support any downtown commercial. Through this redevelopment, we were able to push that garage closer to the Four Corners area that our consultants recommended, which is where City Hall is, the movie theater, and then Building A and Building B end caps for Park 170. Those are the prime real estate for restaurants and retailers per the market analytics. So we wanted to bring the garage as close as possible to support that because, again, when you look at all other town centers in the region, they have a garage that's relatively close to the theater and the restaurant establishments as well. So that's the goal. It's a lot of work still. It takes every step being done to the best of our ability to get where we're going to go. But, it wasn't a pretty picture that we inherited, but we're moving forward in finding solutions where we can. So at least we're going to fix parking on one side of Park 170, and we'll look for ways to fix parking on the other side as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Laszlo.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you know how many cars are registered on your antenna now? Just to see how average of how many cars are going to be moving into the city?
In terms of vehicle trips?
No vehicles that are registered to the city in your apartment
Right.
complex?
We have 110 units in there, and we have a 1.12 parking ratio. So my guess is we have like 125.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for your question, sir. Thank you. Do you have a follow-up? Yes. Okay.
Back to the parking, you said that the 1.3 parking requirement was based on current parking studies, yes? Correct. So if this project goes through and is successful, won't it immediately exceed that parking demand or that parking supply?
It's going to provide 1.3.
It's going to provide 1.3, but the need for 1.3 was based on the current state of the city center area. And if the city center area is redeveloped, won't it require more parking in the first, inherently?
It was under 1.3. The study showed the parking requirement should be under 1.3. We're going to provide parking as we develop. So it's always going to have more than enough parking.
I think there's two parts to your question. So so the 1.3 is covering residential parking, and that's going to be a fixed component of the number of units that you have and the demographic ratio, the demographic profile that you have. So pre-COVID and during COVID, we've analyzed Park 170 and Artena to fix kind of the ratio, the variables for residential parking. So the 1.3 is kind of fixed, but you're absolutely right. If the town center comes in here and is successful, then the parking demand is going to spike for commercial uses, right? That's the 150 spaces. That may not end up being enough, right? Which is why we need to then, on the other side of Park 170, add more, and that's why the garage is so critical, because that provides kind of that over parking, if you will, for the commercial here. So we built a pretty good ratio for commercial, much better than before. The consultants have recommended about five spaces per 1,000 square foot of retail with the garage, right? That helps us get there for the downtown. But you're absolutely right. As the town center becomes more and more popular, the commercial demand is certainly going to skyrocket, and we're going to have to keep tabs on that and see, are we going to need more commercial parking? Because that ends up happening in some downtowns like Leesburg, right? They struggle with parking. They never planned enough parking for successful commercial, and we don't have that problem right now, right? We have the opposite. We don't have no commercial. Once we have successful commercial, it'll be a good problem to have, but you're absolutely right. A future council maybe have to deal with, okay, now what do we do, right? We've done the maximum we can do right now, and we'll have to think through that in 10 years if we're successful here. But you're absolutely right with the expansion of demand from a commercial standpoint. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you, Mickey, and thank you very much, sir, for coming this evening. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of an ordinance incorporating Title 46.2 of the Code of Virginia as amended and reenacted, except those provisions and requirements for which the violation constitutes a felony and which by their very nature can have no application to or within the city, into Section 24-3 and incorporating Article 2, Section 18.1-266 and following of Chapter 7 of Title 18.2 of the Code of Virginia as amended and reenacted into Section 24-35 as presented.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay. We have no unfinished business. Moving on to new business. 9A is first quarter appropriations of city and schools.
Yeah, I have nothing to add beyond the memo unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, any questions for Laszlo? Nope, okay. There are two motions. The first motion is that the governing body appropriate $31,351,409 to the city for quarter one of fiscal year 2024.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Second motion, that the governing body appropriate $14,872,594 to city schools for quarter one of fiscal year 2024.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 9B. 9B is AXON Fleet 3 camera kit.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. I'm going to spend some time on this because unfortunately, we weren't able to get on the website. This was a very last-second agenda item. And again, you don't have to take action tonight, but the reason why we brought it forward is that if you do take action tonight, there's a savings for the city of about $14,000. So whenever we can get savings, we're gonna act. But I'll try to go into more detail here just for transparency purposes. So the city a few years ago entered into a contract with Axon, a company that provides multiple services to the police department. One of those includes cameras for our vehicles. We have 11 right now for the newer fleet models, and then we're still with the old camera system for the older fleet models. This year, we're going to replace additional 10 vehicles with the newer fleet, so we're going to have 10 additional Axon cameras. Unfortunately, the contract that we signed a few years ago is ending now, so we're looking to renew that contract. And they've given us a quote to renew the contract plus to add those 10 additional vehicles. And in front of you, you have both quotes, and you can see they're trying to kind of maximize sales this year. So if we have an agreement with them prior to the start of the fiscal year, they're going to give us an additional $14,000 discount. They already started it with a $79,000 discount incentive to try to bring the police to expand and continue.
Very good reason to vote tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why we were debating what to do.
It's a necessity anyway, so.
Absolutely. We knew we were gonna bring this back anyways. So, but we just found out today about that price because we told them we had to bring this to the governing body because the threshold for this is $250,000 for the contract, far exceeding my authority. We said we had to bring this to the governing body. Our next meeting is July 18th. We are meeting tonight, but that's kind of last second. But we decided to pull the trigger, bring this to you all this evening. So you can see we do have funding in between the FY24 CIP. That's for the new add-ons, kind of the one-time fee, and then under contract services as well. To cover the ongoing maintenance. So in the future years, you'll see a combination of both always, a CIP contribution for police equipment as we replace police fleet, and then ongoing contract maintenance services every year to cover the maintenance cost of those cameras. And I have Chief Lugo here to answer any technical questions as well. We'll turn it over to if you have any questions for us.
Welcome, Chief. Any questions for this? Yes, ma'am.
Really quick. I'm guessing what this is, but so that the residents and so that I just don't assume what it is, can you explain what we're voting on?
These are the in-car cameras that come on when the lights come on or officers are responding, conduct traffic stops, everything's being recorded from the vehicle.
Okay, which is
And it also-
different than the.
And it's actually integrated with our body cameras. So
Okay.
whatever the dash cam won't cover, the capture, our body cameras does capture.
Okay, so it's a 2-for-1.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Does this include your RMS system? Is this the part of the contract with the RMS system?
It's different contract,
The two
but it's the
separate-
same
right,
company.
the two separate- This includes evidence.com, I assume. This is the
Yes.
connection.
Yes, sir.
And also with the interface with Brazos.
Yes,
So you don't pay that on the tower side, you pay that on this side, right?
yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Question? Yes, sir.
I don't remember, just my memory, when we first approved the Axion contract, was that a sole source contract or was it bid out?
I want to say that was sole source, right?
Yes, sir. Sole source. We've been Axon customers since 2010. So we've been a customer of them for a while, but we did sole source on the big contract that you're referring to.
Okay.
You were the first one in the region.
Yeah, we were the first Virginia agency to use body cameras in Virginia.
I think you got a grant for it, right?
Oh,
I'm not sure how Chief Evans paid for it at the time.
Because I remember my brother talking about it, because
Yeah.
I think he was one of the ones that was part of the
Yes, you're right.
spearheading it.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
yeah. Councilmember Javed, do you have a question?
Oh, no, no.
Yeah,
thank you.
okay. No questions? Okay.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
So this will also be sole source because it's beyond 200,000, so it's not small procurement. Is that correct?
What was the
And it's
question?
sole source because it's the only, they're the only ones that work with the equipment we currently have, and they're the only ones that provide this equipment within this areas, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll just need to, it's a sole source contract, we just need to make that stated in the record. It'll be part of the recitals. It'll also, we'll post on our website that we've entered into a sole source agreement. We just need to make sure it's very clear what we're doing here.
Okay, thank you, Dean. We had a little static there.
Oh, were you able to hear what I said?
Yes.
Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. And also, Chief, if you could just have Axon provide the justification for sole source. I know that we haven't in the past, but it'd be very helpful to have that for this contract as well.
Yes, sir. I'll get you the updated one.
Okay. Anything else, Dean?
Thank you. No, ma'am, nothing else.
Okay. Any last-minute questions or comments? Okay.
No, I just think that Dean's information will add to the transparency of this. And I appreciate our city attorney chiming in. Thank you, Dean.
The staff.
You're very welcome.
The staff recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign the necessary contractual documents with Axon Enterprise Incorporated to cover 21 in-car cameras at a total cost of $257,832.34 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, public comment time. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. It's the pollen. We are, this is our second public comment time. Would anyone like to make public comment?
I have a question. We don't have a sign on, that says Manassas Park Library. Are we ever going to put that up on the building, on the outside?
Yes, they're working on kind of like a retail style signage. It's going to be called the Park Central Library.
Okay.
So the system is Manassas Park City Libraries, includes Park Central Library, and then the book nook at the community center.
So there'll be something that says
Yes.
library in the building? Okay, on the building. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
So I'm sure you'll probably announce it during your time, but let residents know, and I'm sure the staff here, everybody else here knows that Manassas Park got a $500 grant from Keep Virginia Beautiful for cigarette abatement, litter abatement. And that is the direct work of the Community Maintenance Working Group, but primarily the support from Yvette Monet, the staff member. So a big thank you to Yvette, and this might be a small little grant, but there's, we're going to keep working on getting some more.
That's great.
More to come. Okay. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, as we come to a close on Pride Month, I just want to thank our city for flying the progressive flag at all of our official flag poles. I know it's coming down on the 30th, but it's been great. I think we're one of the few cities in Northern Virginia to actually fly the progressive flag during Pride Month. And it's a wonderful testament to our openness and the inclusiveness of our
We're
city.
very
and
welcoming.
equality. We are.
We are.
So that's fantastic. And thank the staff for making that happen. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we'll move on to city manager's report.
Absolutely. Okay, so just kind of public service announcement. Air quality, unfortunately, is going to get bad again for the next couple of days. So the wildfires in Canada are still going on. It's now coming back down this area. So it's supposed to be orange over the next couple of days, which is okay for most people. But for those with any respiratory illnesses or other conditions, just be careful spending too much time outside over the next couple days. So we'll keep monitoring that. Unfortunately, if it gets too bad, we'll have to reassess Saturday night as well with the fireworks if it gets to a level that's threatening to everyone who's participating. So just want to put that out there again, that unfortunately we're not done with the Canadian wildfire smoke issue. We do have a regularly scheduled meeting set for June 30th. That was really just in case, as needed, if the budget wasn't approved. Since the budget's already approved, I recommend that we cancel that governing body meeting.
I think we all approve.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. And then just a reminder, July 1st for residents is the fireworks show this year. So Saturday night, we'll have the fireworks show.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. We have no closed meetings, so is there anything else for the good of the city? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I have a question. I think we need to update my
Night.
before I give it to him.
Thank you, Dean. Good night.
Thanks. Good night, Jeanette.